What's going on, guys? Rob Pizzo back with you. And if you're a fan of Major Junior Hockey, I've got some news you're absolutely going to love. The CBC and the CHL have entered into a partnership. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we're going to have 6 games across all 3 leagues on the network. Also, the CHL Game of the Week is going to be available streaming on cbcsports.ca, the CBC Sports app, and GEM. That is a lot of junior hockey, and we've got to get you set up for the season. So I called the man who's going to be the voice of these CHL games, Victor Finley, and he's joining us now. Victor, thanks so much for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. Looking forward to it.
All right, Victor, I've done a million videos previewing seasons in so many different leagues, and one of the first questions I always ask is, who is the team to beat? But this year, that is a very, very difficult question because we just got out of the COVID season. 2020 looked very different for all 3 leagues. So maybe walk us through that, how they all attacked that COVID season and how that's going to affect what they do this season.
Yeah, well, I think all 3 leagues under the CHL, the QMJHL, the WHL, and the OHL are coming off very different seasons in the year 2020. And they were all different than what they normally would have had. But the way the 3 leagues approached the year was pretty different, all things considered. So for the QMJHL, they had the closest thing to what we would consider a normal season, especially under these circumstances for a Canadian Junior Hockey League. So they got off the ground on October 2nd with their season. Now, they did encounter issues with COVID-related tests throughout the year. A lot of teams had to quarantine for periods of time. There were instances where they did have games in bubble situations as well, but they did finish their season on June the 5th in the summer. So it ran from October to June. They had a playoffs. They had a champion, that being Victoriaville this year. A lot of teams managed to play over 30 games. Some managed to play over 40 this year as well. So all things considered, players had an opportunity to play in the Maritimes and Quebec, and they managed to piece together a pretty decent season from start to finish. For the WHL, they didn't get their season off the ground until February 26th, and that was a bubbled season or a hub season as well. So they had teams from Manitoba and Saskatchewan playing each other in a bubble. They had Alberta teams and BC teams in a bubble, and the United States teams as well from Washington, and then Portland, Oregon as well. We're all playing against one another throughout the season too. They canceled their playoffs in April, so they did not crown a champion. They didn't have a playoff of any sort. It was just sort of that interdivisional play throughout the year. So a lot of those teams played a little over 20 games throughout the season. For the OHL, well, I don't have to dissect a whole lot because they didn't have a season at all, unfortunately. It was looking pretty good at one point into March, but due to another wave of the COVID pandemic in Ontario, that season was effectively shut down. So a lot of the players in Ontario, and of course the 3 U.S. teams as well, Saginaw, Erie, and Flint, did not play really any organized hockey throughout the last year and a half, now almost 2 years coming up on in March. So 3 very different seasons, one being completely non-existent for the QMJHL, the WHL, and the Ontario Hockey League.
Okay, all that being said then, that season's done. We're entering what could be, hopefully, a relatively normal season. What can we expect, and how are teams going to attack this season?
Look, predicting junior hockey is always difficult to do. It's going to be even more difficult now, considering the climate that we're coming into this season with. But that said, I still do think there are some contenders and certainly some very intriguing players to watch this year. I think when you look first in Quebec, the QMJHL has a very strong maritime division this year. St. John, the Sea Dogs, just got awarded the Memorial Cup this year. They're going to be a very, very strong team this season. Even if they weren't going to get the Memorial Cup, there was a good chance that they were going to be playing in that anyway. So St. John's going to be very difficult, but that entire maritime division, the Charlottetown Islanders are going to be a very difficult team. The Halifax Mooseheads have some good draft eligible players this year. So the Maritimes are going to be tough. Shawinigan, they've got an entire first line of NHL draft picks that's going to be really fun to watch this year. By the way, you could see them on CBC on October 9th when they play the Roy and Noranda Huskies. So that'll be a fun game to watch. And then the Quebec Ramparts as well. They thought at one point, well, they were very much in the mix for that Memorial Cup bid. So they're not going to be able to host it, but they're going to try and play their way into it. They've got a good team this year as well. In Ontario, I think you're kind of looking at the Barrie Colts right now. They've got some goaltending issues to try and sort out, but the Barrie Colts are a good-looking team led by that young defenseman who's now an LA King prospect in Brant Clark. The Oshawa Generals could certainly play a factor in that Eastern Conference as well, and then maybe even the North Bay Battalion, and you can't count out the Kingston Frontenacs, who have the wonder kid, Shane Wright, who was draft eligible this year too. And then in the WHL, the Edmonton Oil Kings, they only lost 3 games all year last year in a bubbled season. They've got a lot of returning players, first-round picks, Jake Neighbors, Dylan Gunther, and a goaltender in Sebastian Koss, who was just picked by the Red Wings this past season. A lot of times junior hockey is cyclical in terms of teams being really good for a short period of time and then being really not good because they've given up a lot of assets to try and make their team as good as they can. I don't think the Edmonton Oil Kings are going to lose a whole lot from last year to this season. I still think they're going to be a really good team. And in terms of other contenders in the WHL, I don't think you can overlook Kamloops. And then, of course, in the States as well, I think Seattle and the Portland Winterhawks could have 2 very solid teams as well. But it's all unpredictable, Rob. You know, we can crunch all the numbers, all the stats, and make all the predictions we want to before the seasons hit the road here in early October. But you know, things could turn out completely differently because there's just so many unknown factors, more than there ever have been before coming into a CHL season.
Okay, so we can't make predictions as far as teams go. But you said the 3 magic words: draft eligible players. The draft is in Montreal this year. I want you to try to predict 1 player from each league that will be standing up, hugging mom and dad, going up to the stage, shaking Gary Bettman's hand as a first-round draft pick in the NHL.
Well, that's easy for 2 leagues. First off, the Ontario Hockey League, they right now have the consensus #1 overall pick for this year's NHL draft. I just mentioned him, Shane Wright, former Don Mills Flyer, first-round pick into the OHL. He was granted exceptional status to play there as a 15-year-old. Of course, we've seen that before with players like John Tavares in the league, Connor McDavid, of course, guys that have gone on to have big careers. Shane Wright very much following in their footsteps. In his rookie season in the OHL, he was already over a point per game, and although he didn't play with Kingston last year because they didn't have a season, he did play for Team Canada at the Under-18 World Championship that happened in Texas. He was the captain of that team, led them to gold, 9 goals in 5 games in that tournament. So Shane Wright, absolutely all eyes on him. He's the obvious pick to be certainly the first OHL player taken, but right now at this point, he's the consensus #1 in the entire draft. For the WHL, this is an easy answer too. Look no further than the Winnipeg Ice. Matthew Savoy, a forward who played 22 games with the Winnipeg Ice a couple of years ago, but went to the States last year to play in the USHL. He's now back in Winnipeg. He's one of the most exciting, quick, fast, skilled, young, agile players right now in the world for his age group. So Winnipeg's got another really good young player as well in Connor Geekie, who's likely going to be a first-round pick, if not a top 10 pick as well. So they've got 2 really good young stars in Winnipeg that are going to be fun to watch this season. As for the Q, Rob, this is where things get a little trickier to predict because there is no clear-cut #1 draft pick, but there are about 3 or 4 players that could very much be in the mix for that first-round draft selection. I'd say right now, sort of leading the way is a defenseman, originally from Trois-Rivières. Now he plays the Gatineau Olympics. That being Tristan Luneau. He's a pretty good, rangy, 2-way defenseman who was already Quebec's 2020-2021 Defensive Rookie of the Year. So he's primed to have a good season this coming year in Gatineau, but he's got a teammate as well in Antonin Verreau, who's a small, shifty, agile forward who is very much an offensive threat, already was last year. He's going to play a factor for Gatineau this season as well. So those 2 players could very well be first-round picks out of Gatineau, but you can't forget as well about Nathan Gaucher out of Quebec. This is a team that he led offensively last year with 31 points. He's already coming up to his 3rd QMJHL season, so he's got some experience that he's bringing into this team. And this is a Quebec team that we already mentioned, Rob, is probably going to be very, very good this year. So those numbers on a better team now are only going to increase. So Nathan Gaucher is certainly primed for a big season with the Quebec Ramparts.
The man who's going to be calling all that, Victor Finley, thanks so much for doing this. I know you said it's really tough to make a prediction. Right now, the Memorial Cup champion is?
Oh, man. We know the St. John Sea Dogs are playing in it, so that's the only team guaranteed to be there right now. So, I mean, you can't really bet against. That's the safest bet, that's for sure. They got a 1 in 4 chance.
You heard it right here. Guaranteed win from Victor Finley. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.